There you go. I am the director of Bold and have been a Bold coach for about 10 years. Co-coach of Never Any Referrals with Steve Schlueter. I'm also a KWU Master Faculty Instructor with Keller Williams University. And I also own a production team that is in the Lake Norman area in North Carolina. So
All
Steve,
right.
let's tell them a little bit about you because you're kind of a Keller Williams classic, by the way.
Yeah, Keller Williams Classic. I tell you, well,
Yeah.
that little nickname. I've been with Keller Williams since 1998, and if y'all can imagine, back in 1998, we had 3,600 agents at Keller Williams, and I had had the good fortune. I was one of the top 20 Remax agents in the state of Texas, and been courted by Gary Keller to be a team leader at his Austin Northwest Market Center. So I spent 4.5 years working as a team leader with Gary Keller as my operating principal, led the early development of the Heartland region. I operate a couple of market centers today, like you, a Bold coach, part of the Keller Williams University Master Faculty, and co-coach with you on this tremendous program called Never Ending Referrals. So that's enough about us. And
Yeah, let's dig in.
And as we dive into this today, one of the things that we actually have on our Never Ending Referrals program coming up in October 2nd is the Market of the Moment conversations. And and this is kind of off the usual routine of this, and yet, Tammi, I want to go to. Well, and you guys tell me in the chat, is this the craziest wackadoo real estate market you've ever been in? I mean, it's a different kind of market, and its business is unusual more than it's ever been before. And, I shared with a group today, and I'm going to give you a quick conversation that we've got to be having today with our databases, because today's all about database.
Right.
And Tammi, I yesterday the Fed, they made a big move. What'd they do?
They did not increase the rates.
They did not increase the rate, and yet the bigger news in their move was that they said that interest rates were going to stay higher for longer. Higher for longer. And these kind of things do nothing but confuse the consumer more. And as we get in today's conversation about building $1 million database, the position you have to hold, and I'll build on this here as we go through the conversation today, and we'll talk about some of these conversations that we can have. And yet and especially as we move into political season, there's going to be so much noise out there that the consumer is going to get more and more uncertain.
Right.
And it's going to be upon us to bring the certainty that's going to help buyers get off the fence, sellers get off the fence, understand the opportunities in your market. And we're going to touch on just a little bit of that today, but yet we'll weave a couple of these points in about, this current event that just happened. We'll weave it into a role play that we'll model for you in a little bit. But Tammi, let me go ahead and get the screen back up here and we'll go to work. So here we are, we're talking about $1 million database. And Tammi, one of the things that you and I talk about constantly is this little thing called the trust triangle. And we said it's at the foundation of success with a database. Talk to us about the trust triangle and why it's so much at the foundation of that.
It's the foundation of any relationship, honestly. It doesn't matter whether it's a relationship, with a friend or a relationship with your database. It all starts with trust. And the way that you establish that are really in these three different ways. So when we're talking about establishing trust within your database and the people that choose to work with you, number one is that, you exercise logic. They know that you know what you're doing. They can understand it. Your reasoning, your judgment are sound. And Steve, by the way, this is actually where many times as real estate agents, we really dump on the logic piece, right? We stay there and we talk about everything that we can do for you, everything that we know. And yet if we don't exercise the other two, which is, going to the right side of that triangle, is exercising empathy And empathy is very different, by the way, than sympathy. It's, when you're being empathetic, it's that you can see things through their eyes, and they believe that you truly care about them and them reaching their goals.
Mhm.
And so, through active listening and through paraphrasing and making sure that you have clarity, and just acknowledging where they're coming from, you can exercise that empathy. And then the topper on it all is them experiencing the real you. They genuinely know that you're being authentic. Steve, you and I always say that everybody has a BS detector.
Mhm.
And it's not what you all think. So we're not saying anything bad on here, right? It's a believability scale. Everyone can tell when you're not being genuine. And so it all starts with the trust.
Yeah. Well, and so those 3 points is that, and it's interesting, Tammy, when we'll be in a role play or in a bold room, and we're leading people to a conversation, and people will say, "Well, that doesn't sound like me." And that's the struggle we come with, right? When we say that, what we're saying is, I want to be authentic, I want to be genuine, and if you don't feel genuine or authentic, you won't make the reach outs and you won't make the connections. And yet there's a process of getting to authentic, because sometimes the conversations are what the conversations need to be, and what maybe makes is us maybe doesn't get the job done. And so the process of getting to the authentic you and some of the business conversations we have is it's memorizing conversations, it's internalizing conversations, and then it's customizing conversations. And the highest level is authenticizing it, right? It's getting to that place of, wow, this is so in me that it just comes out as a real human conversation. They know they're talking to the right person. And that goes to the bold law that spontaneity is a conditioned reflex, right? I've got to put that stuff in. And especially right now, when there are just key conversations we have to have with people to help them move forward. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. And as I dive in here, I want to talk to you about the 700 challenge. And the 700 challenge is this: it's to go build a connected contact MET database. Tammy, we call them METs. That's what MREA called them, right?
Right.
MET database of 700 people. So the first path to $1 million business that's database driven is 700 relationships.
Right.
And by the way, if your average commission is $10,000, that's 700,000. And then you've got maybe a different kind of database. Maybe it's a geo farm, or other external relationships, or another lead generation tactic that brings the other 300,000 into your business. But the foundation of 70% of your business becomes a database of 700 people. Now, we get this, Tammy, from getting a 10% return on our database, which is the stated goal of Never Ending Referrals. Is if I've got 700, that should be good for 70 transactions a year. And yet, Tammy, does that happen accidentally, or does it happen on purpose?
No, it only happens with a lot of intentionality, consistency, and value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's where the delivery point comes so often, is where we struggle. And we're going to give you a powerful value add conversation today that everybody's going to respond well to. And it's going to help you grow your database. And we're going to weave in, the kind of news that just happened, and how you can turn that into a business conversation as well, that leads people to maybe moving forward in this market, despite maybe what their concerns might be. And I just want to go a little deeper with the 700 challenge, because I think there's an industry, our industry is under attack in so many ways. And I believe that, we've got the class action lawsuits, we've got the do not call lawsuits, the thing that with Anywhere and Remax that is settled regarding, business practices. We've got, disintermediators who want to make the real estate agent just a functionary part of a transaction, and people wanting to get into your pockets. And how do we get control of this? Now, this is a little mission driven, Tammy, because, I was in the room with Gary Keller during the .com era when all the .com people were coming in the room, and they were shaking their finger at Gary Keller saying, you agents are going to have to get used to the idea that we're going to control the lead flow, and that's the way it's going to be. And we're going to have all y'all's data. And he goes, let me ask you this. You mean I'm supposed to give you all my data so you can use it against me to charge me for all the results? And that's the way the disintermediation conversations began. Right. Now we forget that now because we've got so conditioned to that's the way the world is, that we have to take back our industry. And part of the 700 challenge, is just that. So when I go back to the 700 challenge, here's why I call this challenge to you as a real estate agent. We have 330 million people in the US population approximately. The average household size is 2.53 people. That's 130 million households. So if we take that 130 million households, multiply it by 65%, because that's the percentage that are homeowner households, that's 84 million owned households. So Tammi, those 84 million households, if we get just 120,000 agents, and by the way, I don't care if they're all Keller Williams or if there's, a variety of companies, we just have as real estate agents need to control our industry. And if we get 120,000 agents reaching out into those 84,000 households, it just takes 700 households per agent for us to have complete coverage of all the owned households. Now, I say that, and then those other households that aren't homeowners, we have to then adopt them as two, because we got to go have them find the wealth path, the security path that home ownership brings, that you get to be a part of. And so I say this, and I just would, and by the way, Tammi, it might take you 3 years, it might take you 5 years to build a 700 person database. And yet when you've done that, you've built the foundation for $1 million business.
That's right.
Tammi, I'm kind of preachy on that. What are your thoughts?
You are. And here's the thing. It's a matter of just get started. It's not go build 700 people and jam them all in your database right now. It's build the relationships along the way so that they're quality relationships. And you just got to get started.
Yeah, we're going to show you a path to at least 100 great new relationships today. That'll be people that really desire to have a relationship with you. And so, Tammi, as we go through, the first thing we want to talk about is this thing called Do the Database 2. And, this comes from our Never Ending Referrals program. If you've taken BOLD, you've been introduced to DTD2 or Do the Database 2. And Tammi, Susan Scott has a comment, and she says that the conversation is the relationship. And the first thing we're going to have to reconcile, if we're going to have $1 million database, is that we're going to have to communicate with them. We're going to have conversations. And Tammi, what should those conversations focus on? I think you said it, value, right? And Do the Database 2 is a simple process of simply calling 2 letters a week by the first letter of their last name. So right now it happens to be INQ week. And so everybody whose last name begins with I or begins with Q is going to get a phone call. And we do it in a TPCA compliant way and make sure we honor do not call list. And of course, you've been working to build opted-in relationships into a database. We know from all these lawsuits that stuff is real. And so our best path to having people we can communicate is have a database, have people opted in where we have customers and we have relationships. So Tammi, walk through some of the impact of DTD2. And when we take that 700 people and we commit, or if it's 200 a day or 100 a day, or if it's 60 today, and we commit to DTD2, what happens?
A lot of awesomeness is what happens. So yeah, let me dig into DTD2. And Dan, I saw he put R2D2 in the chat. That's cute. And by the way, sometimes we mess it up too. It is Do the Database 2 is what it stands for. And it's so simple because, there are 2 letters of the, if we do the 2 letters per week, and there are 26 letters in the alphabet, it takes us 13 weeks to get through our database, and there are 13 weeks in each quarter. And so when we follow this, here was the number one thing that it really helps negate is if you have a database that is a train wreck, like whoop, whoop, coming into the station, right? Like, there you go. And maybe it's not organized very well. You can search a database by letter of last name. And the most important work that you can do with your database is that voice-to-voice or face-to-face communication. And it accomplishes that, even if everything else is not happening. So it becomes your schedule forever, right? I mean, you know exactly who you're calling. You know that you're doing the most important work for your business, by the way, every single week. You don't go home at the end of the week going, did I do what I was supposed to do? Did I call the right people? Who did I miss? And which leads me to the one that has the biggest impact for me is it helps you avoid call bias. And Steve, we've all done it, right? You look at a name on the screen or you look at a name on your phone and you're like, I'm not going to call that one, right? Because they're not going to answer the phone, or maybe that transaction didn't end well. What if they don't remember who I am? What if they don't answer the phone? We just spin this whole story in our mind. And 99% of the time, that story is not relevant and not true, right? It is a myth that we've made up. So when we follow DTD2, that's our schedule forever. If they're in the database and it's T and J week, like it is this week, then we call anybody who has a last name that starts with T or last names that starts with J, right? Gosh, we can integrate it with social media. One of the things that Steve and I teach in Never Ending Referrals is how do you not just tag the people in your database in Command or whatever system you're using, with those 2-letter tags. You can also create those groups inside Facebook so that you can then post maybe a week in advance, and it kind of primes them that you're going to be reaching out, and you can post things that are compelling. So, we can actually like integrate it with our social media. So our social media is actually helping us, and it's not like the time zap that it can be. Yeah. And then Steve, I think last, it really is your maintenance schedule. It's like your car needs maintenance, and so does your database. Yeah. You all should write this down. Every one of us should know 8 to 10 additional pieces of information on everybody in our database outside of the 4 pieces of contact information, like their name, their cell phone, their physical address, and their email. We should know things about them, like not even just the obvious, like, do they have children? Where do they work? Do they have pets? It's where do they like to celebrate? What do they like to do for fun? Do they have a cause that's important to them? And every single conversation that we have, we should be gaining more of that information, not all at one time, right? So, I mean, it accomplishes so much when we adopt this. We just kind of put, I'm not going to call it the easy button. What I am going to call it is something equivalent to an easy button in that we are staying out in front of our database and doing the great work with it.
Well, and I go back to, and I don't know if I heard you say this. I was looking at the chat, but the last part of DTD2 that's probably the most fundamental thing for me is the beginning and end aspect of it. Think about this. If it's A&W week and I've got 50 people in my A&W group, folks, and I call on Monday and I dial all 50, and that's probably maybe about right for a 700 person database. I might have 50 to 60 in that group. Right. And I dial through all 50. Tammi, I may only talk to 15 people. People are busy. They're going here, there, didn't recognize the number, whatever the case is. And I talk to 15 people. Well, that's only 30% of that group. So if I'm practicing DTD2, I'm not just jamming through 700 names. This week is just 50. And my goal is to connect, deepen the relationship, add value. All of these things are the goal. So why do I want to talk to just 15? So the other 35, I'm going to reach out to again on Wednesday. And maybe Wednesday I talk to 15 more of the 35, of the total 50. Now I've talked to 60% of that group, 30 of the 50. And maybe Thursday, late in the afternoon, a different time slot, I take the remaining 20 and I reach out to the remaining 20 and I connect with 10. Now I've talked to 40 of the 50. Tammi, that's 80%.
Big difference.
Big difference. And
Mhm.
if I'm coming from care, if I'm coming from contribution, if I'm adding value, though, that means I deepen the relationship with 80% of that group. The opportunity to gain referrals, the opportunity to find out more of that data for their database so I can customize the experience, goes up dramatically. And so DTD2 gives you a beginning and end. By the way, Thursday, I'm done. I talked to 80% of the group, 60% of the group, whatever it winds up being, and I've done my most important work for the week. And how good does it feel if on a Thursday afternoon, the most important work for your business is completed?
That's
It's
right.
a powerful feeling, guys. And so I would have you, adopt this in a way that just there's so much simplicity in it. You never know who to call, or you're never at a loss for who to call. You always know because everybody's got the alphabet. And I guess the last thing I would say on DTD2. Well, no, I think that's the last thing I'm going to say on DT. Well, let's talk about the voicemail. The last thing I want to give you is the voicemail. So what's the voicemail you leave when you make that first call and for those 35 that didn't answer? And Tammi, if I'm calling you, it's, hey, Tammi, it's Steve over at Keller Williams. Hey, I had a quick business update and question for you. Hey, I know you're probably busy as all can be right now. No need to call me back. You know the number if you like, but I'll reach out to you later in the week. Tammi, the principle here is what? What's the pro tip?
Well, it's really about, not making them wrong if they don't call you back or they forget. And
Hmm.
so you're really letting them off the hook because we all do that. You also have opened the door to reach back out, later this week. And Yvette, I'd like to answer your question. You asked, are we just calling the Mets with DTD2? And the
Hmm.
answer is yes, that's where you start. And if you've gone through all of the DTD2s, if you've categorized the unmets, maybe you've had some correspondence and timelines or A, B, or C, or however you categorize them, you would start with the hottest ones first.
Hmm. Yeah, and let's see what we've got with Dan. Is there any kind of list you could share with us for those other 8 to 10 pieces of info we should have for each contact? You want to throw a little of that out? So I think I think you kind of
I did a
hit
little.
it. We can maybe put some things in the chat and do that as well. So let me go back to our thread. So the first thing you've got to reconcile, the first of the 3 steps, is understanding the conversation as the relationship, and DTD2 is your path there. Now the second step, and by the way, the DTD2, Tammi, let's go back to the trust triangle for a second. The DTD2 is the delivery vehicle for empathy. It's okay, how am I going to touch that empathy point? Because remember, everything we need to know about success with our database is actually in that little triangle. I have to have people that trust me. And so I do that through logic. They understand that I understand the real estate business and the way it is right now, and I'm a good guide for them. So they ask me, they listen to me, they trust me. The empathy, I care about them and their well-being. Well, that all happens in conversations. It's hard to do that through email. It's difficult to do that through text. It's difficult to do that, through a postcard. And so empathy is in the DTD2, where we get to make the connections. And we talk about how we sandwich the conversation with Ford in one of our lessons in Never Ending Referrals. And then, of course, we have the authentic you. And so now let's go to the logic point a little bit. So Tammi, when I'm out there, and if I've got the relationship and they feel the empathy, they sense that I care about them, their well-being, we have authentic conversations, they know they're experiencing the real you, then I'm going to use my touch system to deliver market updates, newsletter, economic updates, community interest things, items of value, to make sure that now I've got that constant drip so that when they think of real estate, they think of me. And I've got this touch system that's going between calls. And so the MREA originally was a 33 touch, and then they advocated a 36 touch. And Never Ending Referrals, we advocate a 52 touch. And that could look like, here's one of my agents on a newsletter, for the front of a 4-page newsletter. It's 2 monthly direct mail touches, market stats on maybe on one, maybe it's community interest. These are things going on, events, festivals, whatever it is that has you feel like you're one of the community. And then maybe it's 2 monthly emails. One could be just a smart plan that you've got, neighborhood nurture. Maybe it's more hyper local. Over time, you want to go more hyper local, and yet you could start with some of the smart plans that you would find in Command. Ideally, evidence of success becomes a part of that as well. So, Tammi, if I've got 2 monthly direct mail pieces and 2 monthly emails, that's 4 a month. That's 48 touches. And then when I add my quarterly DTD2 call, I hit 52 touches. What is this overkill, or what's your thought here?
No, and I think that sometimes our mindset goes to, oh my gosh, that's so much. And here's what I would say to everyone. Have you ever searched for something, excuse me, search for something online, and the moment you're done, like searching for something, whether it was through Google or you run a website, all of a sudden it chases you around everywhere, right? It's always beside you. And so we're constantly being hit with things. The jury's really still out if once a week is even enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so it's just that little tap, tap, tap. That, remember what Dave Juengst, the co-author of Millionaire Real Estate Agent, said. He said, your success in real estate is going to be in direct proportion to the number of people that when they think of real estate, think of you. And Tammi, in Never Ending Referrals, we tell the story of Barbara. And I'm not going to go into that now, but essentially I had a real estate agent that called me, and she was in my caller ID. She came up on my phone. I took the call, but I couldn't place the name. And I must know her because she came up on the phone, and I took the call, and we had a conversation, and you'll hear about that later. And yet there was something about the call after I hung up. I went back and going, why was she in my phone? Had we had communication? And I went and found out I'd been getting an email from Barbara once every 3 weeks for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to sit on that for a second. So the phone goes off, and I see the name Barbara Delamo, and I'm going, who the heck is Barbara? But I answer it. We have a nice conversation. I go back and look at my email. 7 years I'd been getting an email every 3 weeks. And my response was, who the heck is Barbara? Now, here's the thing, though. After one communication, one empathy, connection, caring conversation, a couple of weeks later, I get the email, and what happens?
You opened it.
I opened the email. And so now everything else in that 52 touch, 36 touch, whatever yours is now effective because the conversations are occurring. So many times we hide behind the emails, we hide behind direct mail, or we just hide. And are we really working our sphere of influence? And the biggest challenge is we're not sure how to add value to it. How do I show up? And this was honestly, Tammi, Bold, for example, has been re-engineered for the market of today, and it's very relational today versus what it had been very transactional in the past. And we got some of the best of the transactional parts back too, right? Yeah. And yet we have to move from transactional to relational if we're going to build a database foundation as the foundation of our business. People want to have a relationship with people they do business with. They want customization, and they want an experience in a person that they can trust. And the NAR statistics say that we're doing a good job. We just don't keep in touch, and they forget about us. And so let's go back to this, and I'm going to go back to the screen share. And so understand that the logic delivery point is your 52 touch. So we hit empathy. I'm going to use DTD2 to get the conversation started. And we're going to talk about what that might sound like in just a minute. And let's go to this next place, Tammy, and that is we're going to in fact model a script for you. Sorry, we don't use that word, Tammy. What's the word now?
Conversation.
Excuse me. Just forget I ever said that other dirty word. It's conversation.
That's
So,
right.
conversation. So we're going to model a conversation for you right now, and I'm going to tie in a current event. And this is the way many of your conversations may sound. And it's how we can help people right now maybe move into the market that aren't in the market, and at the same time grow your database, add value to people. So you see this guy right here, and this person is your client who just moved into your city from somewhere else, USA, and maybe Canada for our Canada friends. And they just moved into your city. And they're all of a sudden having this, they close on their house and they're having this massive anxiety moment because they're realizing, I don't have anybody here. I need to go get my teeth checked. Who am I going to get for a dentist? We got some plumbing we want to get done, here to set them things up. Who am I going to get for that? Oh my gosh, the engine light came on the car. I don't want to go to the dealership. Who's a local mechanic? And they are starting their journey there with this slate of nothing. They're beginning life all over again. And so one of the things we do to solve for that is we build a business to business database. We go find those people that we can play connector for with our database. And so now here's where this comes into play in terms of growing your database with high quality relationships. Because Tammy, if you're a business owner or a business manager or somebody responsible for the success of a business locally, would you want to be in relationship with the people who are the first or second or maybe third point of contact for people moving new to the area?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
want you to think about this for a minute, guys. This is the space you hold. You hold this space of, as a real estate agent, of being that person. When somebody's coming new to our area, you get involved in their life pretty fast. And if you can help me, and we have a whole session dedicated to business and never-ending referrals, if you can help a business person understand that that's the position you hold in your marketplace, they want to know you. And you can now build a meaningful relationship that is going to feel very symbiotic because you're a potential referrer for their business. Now, this means we also want to get intentional about being a referrer of business. And so why we do that then is we actually have to condition the people in our database that we are that person. So we develop the trust of being that resource for what they might need. And so, Tammy, we've got a conversation around this, and we'll put this in the chat for you a little bit at the end. We'll put the conversation in there for you, so you'll have this conversation. But Tammy, can I just you be somebody in my database and I give you a ring?
Absolutely.
Now, by the way, we call this the 5-star script. So let me take a sip of something real quick. Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Tammy, Steve Schlueter over at Keller Williams. How you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome. Hey, thanks for taking my call. Hey, I'm working on a little project, and I thought you could help me with it. And so thanks for taking my call. But before I get into that, though, just give me a quick little update on you and Bruce. What kind of things have you been up to lately? Any exciting adventures, recently?
Steve, travel is our thing, right? So we've planned the next one, and we'll be in Costa Rica in December.
Costa Rica in December. Wow, that's exciting. Have this a first time to Costa Rica?
It is.
Yeah, we've not been. I would love to. I'll be watching for the details on that one. Okay.
I will share for sure.
Oh, perfect. Hey, let me share with you why I was calling. And I mentioned we're working on a little project. And Tammy, as you can imagine, as a real estate agent, I constantly have people moving to the area that are not from here, and they don't know who they're going to go to for whether it's nails or get their car fixed or get a haircut or any of these things. And we're putting together what we call our 5-star vendor community, and we're really looking to curate the best people that are being referred to us from our clients and friends, so that we can publish this directory of all the best people. And I'm just curious, has there been anybody you do business with that provides service to you, or a place you've gone that just where you just had a rockin' 5-star experience, here in the last, month or so?
Oh gosh, you know what? We did. We just had our house and like all the driveway and everything all power washed.
Oh, wow.
Because the construction has concluded around us, and our house was dirty.
So, wow. And then, so what did they do that was really great that you loved?
Well, we didn't use the company we'd used before because the previous company really left kind of a mess
Mm.
behind, and it was absolutely spotless. Not just the house, everything else was spotless as well. So it was great.
Oh, wow. What's the name of the company?
It is Three Trees.
Three Trees. Okay, Three Trees. And,
Mhm.
and and by the way, just curious, I mean, I'd love to reach out to them, include them in our directory. Do you have a contact at Three Trees I might reach out to?
I do. His name is Tim, and I would give Steve the number.
Okay. So Tim, perfect. Thank you for that, Tammy. I know people are going to be so grateful that we've got a person like that in our directory. And by the way, when I reach out to Tim over at Three Trees, would it be okay if I mention that you sent me his way?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Hey, one other thing, while I've got you, maybe you can help me here with an introduction.
Mm.
And that's this. I've had people asking about CPAs. Do we have a great CPA recommendation? And honestly, mine retired a couple of years ago, and I haven't found the one. And do you happen to have an introduction of what would just be you believe is an awesome CPA?
Steve, I'm kind of like you. I don't know that we've found the one, and he's okay. Bruce always thinks that we're leaving money on the table, so I don't know that I would say like he's the one that I would refer.
Well, I tell you what, then I know, because our network being as vast as it is, Tammy, as I talk to more people about this, that I'm going to find that person. When I do, would you like me to connect them with y'all and do an introduction?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely.
Perfect. I'll make that happen. And I don't know if it'll be this week or next week or when I find that person. Yet when I do, I'll connect you. And then also when we publish this directory, I'll tell you how to access it, so that it can be a resource for you guys as well. We just never know what we're going to need. And I'm not, I don't know if I'm even trusting online reviews anymore in some cases. It's just like, this is why we're going to the people that know. Um, I did want to ask you this as well, and it just came to mind, and that is, Tammy, one of the things that's come up this week is, the interest rate thing has been really a buzz around real estate. Where are things going? And the Fed didn't make any changes this week, and yet they said probably future increases and higher for longer. And there seems to be a lot of confusion around the real estate industry right now, and um, wanting to just help clear that up for people. What have you been hearing about the real estate industry here in Charlotte, or the real estate, but about real estate here in Charlotte?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm hearing anything other than even what you just said. The news talks about the interest rates and that people don't have anything to buy. And I mean, that's really all I've been hearing.
Well, and it's that's pretty much it. Interest rates are high. People aren't sure where they're going to go. Or they're going to come down in election year, and of course, our forecast is that they're not. They're going to stay elevated due to inflation concerns. And yet, there's some very unique opportunities in our market today. And so, I'm curious: have you and Bruce considered any real estate changes in y'all's real estate world in the next 12 to 24 months? Or are you guys pretty set?
We aren't personally moving. However, the right investment comes along. That's always gonna
Mhm.
grab our attention.
Okay. Well, and I tell you what, if that's something y'all are really focused on right now, would we like to get together and set up a strategy meeting to explore what that might look like today?
Sure.
And then I would set up the meeting and go from there. And so, well, Tammi, and we set the meeting. So, Tammi, thanks again for chiming in. Hey, excited to hear more about your trip to Costa Rica. Now, by the way, you are y'all actually going to do Christmas there? You mentioned December.
No, no, no. We're gonna be back. Spend time with the boys coming home.
Yeah.
See the holidays. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, have a great time. And then as soon as I get that CPA connection, I'll get you connected with that. Thank you for the Three Trees introduction. We'll reach out to them right away and get them in our directory.
Absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right.
Steve. What a great idea.
All
All
right.
right.
So, Tammi, dissect this a moment.
Yeah, well, you know that this is by far, hands down, this is my favorite conversation to have with a database. I believe if you're having 4 conversations a minimum each year, this can be 2 of those.
Mhm.
And it's a value added conversation because what Steve started with is that he's working on a project for past clients like myself, friends, family, all of that. I know that Steve is a real estate agent, and yet he's building out this directory of things that don't necessarily just even have to do with the house. If I hadn't had somebody to suggest, Steve, you could have even said, oh, and Tammi, this doesn't even have to do with just your home, your home ownership. Has there been a business that you've frequented, or somebody who's given you great service somewhere? So you can help people think of things. So that number one is really important because that's value. He's doing work and putting in the time for something that is not real estate related. And number two, he asked if I had a great recommendation, and I did. And Steve, you asked if you could use my name. Well, that's really important because now when Steve reaches out to Tim and says who he is with Tim and that this is a free service he does to just take care of his network of people. Think about the relationship equity that was just created between myself and Tim. Tim thinks I'm I'm amazing because I just introduced Tim to a real estate agent who knows hundreds of people and would like to promote my business for free. When was the last time any of you had somebody call you and say, hey, I'd like to promote your business for free? Anybody? Right? It just doesn't happen. And so that's another key piece. The other thing is when he reaches out to Tim, guys, that's not a cold call. That's a warm introduction to a local business owner. And that local business owner, unless they're not taking new clients, are going to be very happy to speak with you. And those are quality contacts that we can put in our database simply because business owners are in front of more people on a daily basis than people who perhaps work for someone else. Mm-hmm. And so, we have to get out of our mindset. This is such a come from contribution phone call. It's just so impactful. And then you took it even one step further and you asked me about the missing CPA. Now, everyone, you can fill in the blank with whether it's CPA or it's something that not everyone has a 5-star experience around. Because Steve, what's going to happen? You're going to continue making this call. And what might happen around the CPA?
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to find more people that have the need for a CPA. And I'm going to I might be 3 weeks into my DTD2 cycle, and I've got 7 people that would like an introduction to a CPA, and then I find one. Well, I'm not going to stop asking the question about, do you know a great CPA, until maybe I've discovered 2 or 3. Because I'm still looking for more people that have that need. And then I can play connector. Now, think about this, Tammi. If I've got 2 or 3 great CPAs that I uncover, and I have 18 people that would like an introduction to a great CPA, I go to all 3 and I've got 6 potential new relationships for all 3 of them. Yes. I'm their new bestest friend.
You are, unless they're married to a realtor.
Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. I'd like you all to write this down. I'd like you to start thinking about yourself differently. You're not just a realtor, right? Like that we only take care of people in just the real estate space. Think of yourself as their lifestyle concierge. And the moment we become that lifestyle concierge, and you can even use that terminology when you're speaking with somebody. The other important thing about this is now you're there to help them in life. And this is also now a reason for them to call you. Right?
Yeah.
That's why this conversation is so amazing.
Yeah. And so, and I went ahead and I weaved in a current event, rates, the rate situation. Here's an important question, and make sure you dial in on this question where you're talking to your database. And I asked the question, what have you heard about the market?
So important.
What have you heard about the market? And that's going to give you an opportunity to do two things. And the first thing is you're going to have the opportunity to validate that they have a pretty good grasp of the market. And the other alternatives, you have the opportunity to educate. So it's going to be the other opportunity to validate or educate. And so that opens up a real estate conversation that's still coming from service and contribution, helping them understand. And if it's validate, I might say, well, interest rates are high, and here's what we're forecasting that they're going to say higher. Some people were thinking they were going to come down for election year. We're not actually seeing that. And then because there's so much confusion, we wanted to reach out. Curious, have y'all been pondering any kind of real estate plans the next 12 to 24 months? And she said yes. If she said no, I would have said, well, the reason I ask is because there's so much confusion out there. A lot of people aren't aware of some of the really great opportunities in the market right now, and didn't want them to miss those if there was some desire to do something, because a lot of people are so confused, they're just sitting back. And that's all it needs to be said about that. And it's still coming from service. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's putting you as the trusted advisor and just making sure that they're educated.
So let me go back to the screen, and we're going to begin to wrap up, and we'll put the script, the conversation in the chat for you in just a moment. And let's just wrap up on a few things. Again, that's called the 5-star conversation, and we'll put it in there for you in a moment. What we'd like to do to wrap up, though, is we want to offer an opportunity for you to really lean into this idea of, my business is my database. And we're encouraging, don't go one more day just living with cold calling, paying for buyer and seller leads. This is an opportunity for you to unlock a business where more people begin to call you because of that relationship you're developing with them. So we have a program called Never Ending Referrals, and it's 8 core lessons. This is kind of the outline of Never Ending Referrals, and you can find the details on our website at neverendingreferrals.com. You can screenshot this if you like. There's a couple things knocked off the bottom, it looks like. And yet we begin again. Oops, something on that slide didn't quite take right. Yeah. So we begin again. Our next session is next week. We're actually going to be in session 8 of Never Ending Referrals. We have Monday, October 2nd. We begin our next cycle of Never Ending Referrals with our market of the moment conversations. This is where what we're doing is to help you every DTD2 cycle. What's the conversations we should be having right now? And it's never been more important that we show up as that local advisor to help people get the results they desire. And so we are give them a little more detail on Never Ending Referrals, Tammi. And Megan, if you will put in the chat the 5-star conversation, and if you'll also put in the link on how they can go and register for Never Ending Referrals. Being part of our community is $39 a month. It's a minimum 5-month commitment. But what can they expect from Never Ending Referrals, Tammi?
So much. Our entire position is around helping you with your database and getting that 10% or better return on the database. And by the way, helping you add 250 quality contacts. So when I think about 250 quality contacts, Steve, if we're doing a 10% return, that's 25 transactions. So that is our stated goal of you being a part of our community. We're going to walk you through how to do client events at a high level. We're going to teach you around geo farming, because that's another database and something that is very listing centered that you can do at high level. And if you've heard Jason Abrams talking lately, he is all about like farming is not dead, and it's not. And we're going to teach you how to do that so that you can get results in weeks, not months or years. So we're going to walk through that as well. We also have a resident tech guru, and he actually does recordings for us and sometimes joins us. It's always the first Monday of the month, and walks us through how do we integrate technology and use it so that it's leverage and not frustrating. And those are really, really great as well. Oh my gosh, social media. We're going to teach you about social media. We're going to teach you about video, how to have even more impactful conversations. When Steve just shared that on October 2nd, we'll be doing the market of the moment conversations, we do that every quarter. So every quarter, as the market is changing and shifting around us, we're going to put together the conversations that you can have with your database for that entire quarter, so that we're always giving you the next conversation to use as you're reaching out. And they're very much like this. So they're very interactive, very interactive. Like our chat is always, going 100 miles a minute, and we move as the market moves, is what I would say.
Amen. Well, and so here's what I would say, guys, is we would love to have you be part of our community. Let us do this now, so that as you navigate a successful relaunch of your database, launch of your database, reinvention of your database, I want you to think about January 2025. And I want you to think about waking up and knowing where your first 25, 40, or 140 transactions are coming from, because you've now built a business that will do that. And how many of us wake up on January 1 of every year with, oh, hell, can I do it again? And that's not fun. And it's time to get out of the chasing business mindset and get into the attracting business mindset. And Tammi, you always say it this way: it's going from being Tammi the realtor to being Tammi my realtor. And when you can get 700 relationships, and if it takes 3 years or 5 years, or if you're already there and you've got to refine your approach, that's what we're here to partner with you on. So I trust we'll see many of you. We're live Mondays, 3 Mondays a month. Next one is next week at 12 Central Time. Thank you for being with us today. We trust you got something you can go put to use in your business this week.
Yeah, thank you all. We look forward to seeing you soon.